Hey everyone, it's your homegirl Jenny Lee with VRA Realty, and welcome to my very first episode of Good to Know in Chester County, your inside scoop of local businesses making Chester County feel like home. And today we have Jason Fallon with Movement Mortgage. I'm really excited to have you here today. I love working with you. You've been in the business for a long time, so I'm happy to help other people learn about you and everything you offer. So thanks for coming on.
I'm grateful for the opportunity. I've been love working with you as well, and I can't wait to share a little bit more about my business and let's talk a little bit more about Chester County.
Yeah. So why don't we just start with letting people know like how you got started, how long you've been in the business.
Yeah, so I've been in business for a little over 26 years, quite a while.
Yeah.
I started off working for a mortgage company in Philadelphia, and then over the coming decades or the past decades, been kind of doing various things, all still in the lending field, but owned a broker shop and then worked for a bank and then worked for a mortgage company, which is what I currently do. And I've loved every minute of it.
Awesome. So what kind of made you passionate about getting started in it?
Happenstance. A friend of mine had gotten into the industry. I was doing sales, but it wasn't anything to do with mortgages. And he talked me into giving it a shot. And the rest, as they say, is history. I'm very passionate about it. It's different than selling, cell phone service when you just get out of college. You're really making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
And getting people into their first home is something that I specialize in, but it's something that I really, really enjoy doing.
Yeah. So what gave you the idea to get started in Chester County?
I was from here, and a lot of times when you're getting into any kind of business, whether you own the business or you're getting into sales, it really is, it starts with those around you. It really, really starts with the people very, very close in your sphere of influence that you can reach out to and start letting people know. And this is before social media that I got into the business, right? So it's been quite a ride.
Yeah. So what would you say that you love most about running your business in this area?
I love Chester County. I'll be honest. It's Chester County was the fastest growing county for, I think, the better part of 3 decades, leading up to maybe more recently in the 2020s at this point. But there was always construction going on. It was a very, very energetic county to work in. And, my work bleeds into Delaware County and bleeds into Montgomery County, but Chester County's always been home. Yeah. And as we've seen the fortunes of this wonderful county in Westchester rise, it's been a great place to build my own career.
Yeah. I mean, I'm born and raised, never left. And I love it. I think the one thing that I love about our area is that, specifically Downingtown, because that's where I grew up, but of course we've expanded. I mean, I grew up with, it too, the farmer's market where the Home Depot is.
Absolutely.
It's totally changed and grown quite a bit. But what I do love is that somehow they managed to keep this small town feel. And I do think it kind of expands past that, in other areas. But I just think that's something really special.
There is a quintessential charm to Chester County. What I found, which is interesting, it's not industry related to me, but that, a lot of people when they get out of college, they spread their wings and they go other places. But a lot of my friends that I went to high school with in Downingtown, when they all got married, both boys and girls, they brought their husbands and wives back to Chester County. Versus going wherever maybe their spouse was from. Yep. So there's something about this area that's really, really, it's a lovely place to raise a family. It's a lovely place to run a business. It's a lovely place to do fun things, and I'll never leave.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I always jokingly say, we don't leave, and it's really cool to see some of my friends since first grade, have businesses around here, and, it's pretty neat.
Yep.
So back to your actual business, what would you say that separates you from, other lenders?
Right. So as a residential mortgage planner, what I do is I help people buy homes. I help people refinance those homes. I help people buy their first home, their second home, upsizing, downsizing, investors. I work with a lot of investors. I work with a lot of people that want to buy a shore house or a house up in the mountains in the Poconos.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun developing my business over the years because I've got a lot of people that I help with their very first house.
Yeah.
And now fast forward, 26 years later, I've done multiple transactions for the same people that are now in much, much larger homes, or I help them buy their first cherished shore house that they really, really love.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun developing those relationships over the years, and they've become a great referral source for me as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So you have like an array of things that you're able to do for
Yeah,
for your
home equity lines
clients.
of credit. We can do refinancing. We have first-time home buyer grants. Pennsylvania has some great first-time buyer programs. The federal government does. So we have a litany of products, and we're not a bank, so it's not one single little box of lending options. We work with probably over 50 banks, and that really, really expands the array of products and services that I can offer.
Yeah. I mean, working with you, with my clients, I can say, people really trust you. I think that you're honest. And I also think you're transparent, which is just the kind of person I need to work with because I operate the same way. And, this is a big deal. People are spending a lot of money and they need to trust who they're working with. And they also need to have someone not give the fluff. They have to just say, listen, this is where we're at. This is, here's some options. And I think that people really, they need that. So, and I think you do a great job with that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the few industries where sugarcoating isn't usually the best way to go. Being a straight shooter really, really pays dividends because it's really, really important. And I take that responsibility of, potentially facilitating their largest debt they'll ever have in their life. That is a large responsibility, and I take that seriously, but I do it with brevity and try and make the process as seamless and as stress-free as it can be.
Yeah.
But it is a very, very difficult and tedious process to navigate. And I think with my 26 years of experience, I've learned some hacks along the way to really make it a much more enjoyable process, dare I say, right, to get to the finish line.
Yeah. Do you have anything going on right now that people might want to hear about? First-time homebuyer programs or,
Yeah, there are a litany of first-time homebuyer programs. I was just talking to a colleague of mine earlier today, as a matter of fact, and we were lamenting that. And just in the last, say, 5 years, there used to be maybe a half dozen first-time homebuyer programs out there. Now there's probably over 50. And depending on the state, depending on the county, right, depending on if you're a first-time buyer or not, depending on your credit score, depending on your income, there are grants, there are no-interest loans or low-interest loans to help with down payments.
Yeah.
There's ways to subsidize down payments and closing costs now. So there's a lot of different ways that we can help clients. And I help them navigate that because there's a lot of choices to be made.
Yeah, cool. All right, so we all want to know... Tell me about the most challenging deal you've ever had.
Yeah, it was probably my worst day in lending. I had a very, very important client that was referred to me by a very important agent that I work with. And everything seemingly was going well until we got the appraisal in, and it came in $100,000 low. That is not a small number.
No.
And everyone was panicking, basically. These people, unfortunately, had terminated their lease, right? You have to give notice. So we were coming up on their lease expiration. They were not from the area. They didn't have family. They weren't necessarily of great means to quickly do something, to quickly pivot, if you will. And they had a young family. So the thought of not being able to consummate this deal was really, really taxing my soul. And it ended up being, we had to go back to the seller and tell the listing agent the bad news and see if there was something that could be worked out. And the seller was not from the state, so everything got delayed. It wasn't like a quick phone call to get a quick answer to see
one
if we
thing
could,
after another.
Yeah, and it literally took 24 hours. And I got a lot more gray hairs in one single night than I probably did the previous year. However, there was a happy ending to the story.
Okay.
The next day, the seller got back to us, and they own the property outright, and they understood that if they terminated this deal and went somewhere else, they probably would have the same problem with the appraisal on the next deal.
Yep.
So they actually agreed to come down basically all the way down. They lowered their purchase price by $100,000 so the seller could close. And I think a lot of it, so the buyer could close, I think a lot of it had to do with the agent that I worked with had them write a lovely letter to the seller.
Yeah.
I think the seller really fell in love with the buyer, and the young family knowing that they wanted their house to be occupied by someone that would care for it as much as perhaps they did when they lived there. So all's well that ends well.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, though.
But that 24 hours, I lost a lot of sleep.
That's a lot. That's a huge difference.
Yes.
I mean, and of course, we see that all the time now.
Yes.
I mean, but I think we're almost kind of expecting it. You know, when we put those offers in as realtors and or put an appraisal gap addendum in, something. But that's pretty shocking. So I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So were they.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, there's got to be something, you know, that keeps you going. You know, like it's a challenging job, especially right now. Interest rates are kind of a little bit higher than we were hoping for. And what do you have a good something, you know, that keeps you going? Or sometimes when you have days like this, you'll look back and be like, you know, had a really good experience where, you know, it kind of just makes things a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think that you know, real estate is one of those few areas where it's a profound change in someone's life.
Yeah.
And I think one of my favorite things to do is I like working with all of my clients, regardless of what kind of home they're buying, investors to first-time home buyers to moving up in the world.
Yeah.
But basically, the challenging people, the first-time home buyers that have never owned before, that maybe have a crappy landlord, maybe they just feel like they're 30 years old and they want to feel like they're adulting or realizing the quote-unquote American dream. And to get a first-time home buyer into a home using maybe one of the grant programs that are out there because maybe they didn't think they could qualify. Maybe they had some challenges on their credit or their income. And to work through those challenges and then get that person to the finish line is really, really fulfilling.
Yeah.
You see a lot of tears. Most of the time it's just happy and
It's a huge milestone.
Yeah, it really, really is a big milestone. People really feel like they're adulting at that point when they buy, and they're really taking control of their own destiny. They're not paying someone else's mortgage. Now they're going to pay their own. So that's really, really a cool feeling. I remember when I bought my first house and how good I felt. And so to be able to do that vicariously through, you know, probably at least 30 or 40 clients a year that I work with that are first-time buyers, it's really, really fun.
Yeah, yeah. So do you think, what is something about the industry that people might not realize, or something that you were like, oh my gosh, I get this question all the time, you know, just something that you feel like you could share with anybody listening right now?
Yeah, I think there's really two things I would say. The first thing, and this is on the purchase side of the business, the first thing, you'd be surprised how many people don't realize you don't have to put 20% down to buy a house. You know, if you're a first-time buyer, you can put down 0% if you're a veteran or if you buy a house in a rural area. Most of the time, it's the limit of 3 or 3.5%, depending on credit, which is actually a lot less than what people think. So there are people out there thinking 20%, and you do that calculation. That is like, how long will it take for me to save that? And for some people, that might be a decade. So to be able to do that at a much, much smaller range, plus with the add-on of being able to get grant money and things like that, that would be the first thing. And the second thing is you don't have to have fantastic credit either. Some people think, and everyone's version of bad credit is different. Some people, they might have missed one payment on a car 2 years ago and they think they got the worst credit in the world, and they don't. You know, and on the flip side, I've got people that like haven't paid anything for a while and think they've got decent credit. So, you know, it runs the gamut. My point is that people don't know unless they ask, or if they get information from a colleague at the water fountain. That might not be the best advice to be receiving. So I always encourage people just to have that conversation with a mortgage professional. Just get those questions out of the way. We're not trying to sell you anything, because you got to reach out to the realtor then. You got to find the house. We just want to answer those questions up front.
Yeah, and I think I want to add something to that. Like also, I mean, this day and age, I feel like instant gratification is expected because there's so many things that we can just, you know, look up and have an answer, or, you know, oftentimes I'll have clients, whether they're new and referred to me or whatever, they're going to reach out to me right away and say, Jen, I found this house. I love it. Can we go look at it? You know, blah, blah, blah. And my first question is, have you talked to a lender? Like, do you know what you're pre-approved for? And, you know, because they just have this excitement. And I feel like, you know, really the first step for buyers is not me. It's really you. They should be talking to you. And I tell them, listen, even if you're thinking about buying a year in advance, talk to a lender, because they're going to look at everything, and there's a few tweaks that you could suggest that will make a huge difference, right, in their interest rate or whatever for when they're actually really ready to buy. And, I always tell them, like, just trust me on this. Reach out to Jason. He's going to give you, some great insight. And then in 6 months, we'll be ready to pull the trigger. And that way, I always sound like the ball's more in your court then. You know what the numbers are. You know what's realistic for you. You know what you're comfortable with. And, it's just this funny thing. It always happens. I always get the call first. And I just think that having that, the buyer's a little bit more prepared talking to you first goes a long way.
It really does. I mean, the old adage, those who fail to plan to fail, is never more important when it comes to buying a home. And exactly. I think the people that give me a call 1 or 2 years prior to when they're actually ready to purchase, they end up being very, very good clients from the perspective of getting them through to the finish line with the least amount of headaches along the way, whether it's them or whether it's the other parts of the process.
Yeah. So what would you say, like, how can people best support you in your business?
Well, there's two different kinds of ways to support my business. One is I work on a 100% referral basis. So talking to lovely agents such as yourself, I think that's a great thing to do. I work with financial planners. Think about anyone that has influence over people that are looking to buy or make financial decisions involving a home, right?
Yeah.
Financial planners, tax accountants, estate planners, divorce attorneys. If you know somebody in your sphere, that would be a great referral. And then obviously just the regular client, right? Your sister that wants to buy a house, a colleague at the water fountain, friends, family, anyone that's looking to buy or refinance or take out home equity line of credit to maybe do home improvements, anything related to using the equity in your house or creating equity by buying, that's who I want to talk to.
Yeah, I mean, our industries are like, hand in hand.
Yep.
So it means so much to me. Like when I have a brand new client call me and say, oh, so-and-so worked with you and they had a great experience. I mean, that is like, just like that is the true like compliment. It's such a good feeling. So, when you get that, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and that's the first. I mean, if you ever want to become 100% referral, that has to be your modus operandi in your career. You have to put the client first. You have to take care of their needs because they're the ones that are going to be sharing your information. And it's one thing to share that because you know that person, but it's another thing to share it if you've actually experienced the service that I can provide. Then it becomes a client for life and a referrer for life.
Yeah,
so
true. So where can people find you? If people are liking what they're listening, hearing, and
Yeah, you could find me on Facebook, Jason Fallon. I mean, I'm pretty easy to find in that sense. I've got a Twitter handle of Maximus Fallon and on Instagram as well.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. I think you shared a lot of great information. Hopefully the people listening did as well. So I appreciate you coming on board. And I think that this is one of the biggest milestones, like I said earlier, for people. So, being able to share this information to anyone that's thinking about buying, it's really valuable. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'll be your love, I'll be your sunshine, I'll be your love, I'll be your sunshine.